Well, greetings and welcome. It's good to have you here for this guided meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust, and I'm happy that you're making the time to be here. Before we begin, as usual, we have these acknowledgments. Truly grateful for the support that goes into creating Monday night, the Monday night adventure. First of all, a big thank you to our producers, to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for managing this, putting all this together so it gets to you. A big thank you to our mindful movement teacher, and as well to our mindful dialogue leaders after this session. It's a great way to have the whole experience if you're interested. So just as a reminder, at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, you can join a mindful movement class, which will help to prepare you for the meditation at 7:30. Our talk begins at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then afterward, I do my best to end right at 8:45 p.m. But if you'd like to, a couple minutes after that, like around 8:50, you can join Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy for Mindful Dialogue, which is an opportunity to share about your practice, share about the talk, and just make some human connection, which is important and critical. The links, those are all on Zoom, and the links to those are on my website at jonathanfaust.com and my Facebook page. A thank you as well to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this event, and my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, who have been the host for Monday Night Meditation for many, many years. Also, let you know that I do offer a monthly newsletter, which includes a summary of the talks, some resources for your practices, and all of my best photography for the month. There's also a weekly, which kind of gives you an update as to what's coming up. You can sign up for that on my website. And finally, just to say that it's such a joy to be able to offer these practices and these teachings, to offer them freely so no one's denied access. And part of that offering of free content and practices is an invitation for you if you feel drawn, if you feel inspired to support this. Deeply, deeply grateful. Your support means that I can continue to offer this freely so no one is ever denied access. It's a cool way to do things. It's a neurotic way to make a living. But it's a really cool way to do things. We're going to be talking and exploring having the body as an ally and helping tune into the body so the body can give you feedback, tuning into what we could call kinesthetic intuition, or kind of the inner knowing felt sense of the body. It's this tremendous tool for becoming more aware of here and now, and also tuning into this sense that this kind of hypothesis that the body doesn't lie. Pretty cool stuff. But of course, what we need to do is take some time to really tune in to the felt sense of the body. In essence, what happens is the mind tends to kind of override this innate intelligence of the body. And for the average person, the only time that's sort of flipped is when you fall asleep. The mind kind of goes somewhere else. The body's free to move and restore itself and heal and so forth. But if you practice somatic awareness, if you practice yoga, meditation, anything that heightens that mind-body connection, you can actually tune in to this innate wisdom of the body, this innate intelligence of the body. So we'll be exploring that in this talk. And all this is a prelude to this meditation, which is about cultivating a deeper sense of this sort of innate sensitivity. So if you're ready for the ride, you can close your eyes. And the first thing you might do as you settle in here is to sense, how does your body feel? Would it like to move or stretch in any way? It's a beautiful way to prepare for meditation. One thing you might do is reach your arms overhead, stretch up to the left side, the right side, let out any sounds. You're on mute. I can't hear you, so you can Moan, screech, bellow, whatever you need. You might like to draw your shoulders up close to your ears, and if you like, take a long, deep inhalation and hold the breath, squeeze the shoulders tight, and then relax the shoulders, and just sense down through the elbows and down through the wrists. One of the most powerful ways of beginning to attune to the subtle energy, the subtle feeling of the body, is to investigate the sensation in your hands. So what you might do here is notice if you could soften your palms. Could you relax your thumbs, relax your fingers? And if you relax, there's this really cool thing. The more intimately you relax, the more intimately you can feel. And you might just sense now, is it possible to detect any sense of energy, any tingling or pulse or any subtle sensations here in the palms, fingers and thumbs? It's this quality of inner listening that can bring you deeply to the here and now. So to help prepare for this sense of deepening embodied presence, you might become aware of your breath now and very gently on the next inhalation, lengthen the breath to the count of 4 or 5. And then glide right into the exhalation, again to the count of 4 or 5. And with a little willful practice here for a few minutes, explore, if you like, matching the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. Let your breath be slow and full and deep. And notice the effect on the mind. You may find that the mind, of course, is coming in with commentary, but just guide your attention back. Start again, counting to the count of 4 or 5, matching the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. And you might explore as well, can you smooth out the breath? Let the breath be smooth and continuous. Just feel the effect. As you're ready in your own time over the next exhalation, let the breath fall away. Let all control of the breath fall away now, and feel your breath effortless, free-flowing, unrestricted. Notice how intimately you can feel the breath. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now? And deepening this sense of what it feels like on the inside. Is it possible to feel your forehead smooth? And to relax or soften the muscles around your eyes. Let your awareness move into the inside of your mouth, just sensing, softening. Feel the volume of your lips. Could you relax your tongue? Let your tongue fill your lower jaw. Relax the root of your tongue down into your throat. And as you do so, is it possible to soften the jaw, relaxing the chomping muscles? Let the jaw very lightly hang from the skull. And exploring and sensing now the back of the head and the base of the skull. The back of the neck and the tops of the shoulders. Feel the arms heavy as you sense from the shoulder joints down through the elbows. Sensing from the inside out, from the elbows down through the wrists. Sensing again from the inside out, the palms, the fingers and thumbs. And again, here you might, as you let your awareness flood into the palms, notice how intimately you can feel any subtle energy, tingling, vibration. You might feel the space inside your throat. And you might feel or imagine the space inside your lungs as you breathe. And scanning through the lower back and the buttocks, noting what might soften here. And just as you rested your awareness in the palms, you might now let your attention rest in your belly, perhaps a few inches below your navel and in toward the very center of your torso. Relax and feel. And sensing down through the floor of the pelvis. Awareness spreading now to the hip joints. And sensing from the inside out, down the length of the legs, and down through the knees, down through the ankles, the tops of the feet and the toes. And the soles of the feet and the heels. Is it possible to sense through the whole body this quality of relaxation? of softening, of receptivity. And from this place of deep relaxation, you might bring your attention now to an anchor of your choosing. It might be the breath. You might narrow your attention to the breath at the nostrils, or the septum, or the belly, or the general sense of your breath. Or you might like to explore using this feeling in the palms as your anchor, this home base you can return to again and again. And yet another alternative might be the sounds. The real-time experience of here and now, right at this contact point. Breath, palms, or the perception of sound. And as you continue in your practice, simply note when the mind is not here. When you wake up with the mind far away, lost in a thought form, in a thought bubble, take a moment to pause. You might even smile inwardly. And notice how gently you can escort your attention back to the here and now, to this point of contact with your anchor, with breath, with the sense in the palms, or with the vibration of sound. If your intention is to cultivate present moment awareness, there is a quality here in practice of starting again. When you notice the mind drifting away or completely lost in thought, take your time to re-arrive. There's no hurry. You might, again, just sense what could relax, what could soften. Feel this home base of relaxation, of inner softening and receptivity. And as you feel again a sense of relaxed presence, very gently guide your attention to your anchor. And you might explore over the next 3 breaths, how intimately can you experience your anchor right at this contact point? One intention in practice can be the sense of present moment, awareness. Another intention can be this establishing of the witness, of who you are as the observer, non-judging, quality of allowing. And here you might become more aware of both your anchor as well as the periphery, the background. Sensitizing yourself to the flow or the stream of your experience. And you might find it helpful, depending on where you are right now, to widen your attention beyond your anchor to the perception of flow, to the perception of everything that's changing. And you might explore what is happening, what is flowing through right now. And can you let it be? Naturally, the mind will become engaged, move into commentary, and when you notice, begin again, relax, soften. Establish your attention at your anchor, here and now. And then again, widen, broaden. Awake to what is changing. Exploring what it means to let things be as they are. One element of practice is here and now, present moment awareness. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware of breathing out. Another element is strengthening the sense of the observer. Your capacity to observe without judgment, to access this quality of awareness that has no preferences. It is simply awake to what is. And yet another quality is the quality to simply surrender into the flow, to let things be as they are. And you might explore if it feels right for you. Let your focus on the anchor to fall away. And can you simply explore this quality of presence? In the midst of everything that is changing, can you sense what it's like to simply rest in awareness? Rest in the here and now. Awake to what is changing. And sensing who you are as the one who is aware. Spacious like the sky. Vast and allowing. in these remaining minutes, exploring even deeper this sense of letting be. As you sense the body, as you sense the movement of the mind, is there anything right now that could soften or relax or let go? Is there anything right now that could soften or relax or let go even more? Notice where you feel the breath right now. Notice the quality of being, the quality of presence. Non-grasping, non-judging. And you might like to deepen your breath a little bit right now. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I am aware of breathing out. Notice how gently you might let your head drift a little to the left, a little to the right. How does your body want to move right now? Give yourself permission for your body to move and to stretch, to shift in any way that feels good. As you're ready, you might reach your arms up overhead. Let out any sounds. Taking your time for your transition. Welcome back. Nothing like a little organic ostrich urine for helping settle allergies. Welcome. A good number of years ago, as a seriously unqualified and underprepared executive, I was working with a board of directors. And there was someone on the board who was kind of coaching me along. So grateful for his attention and his expertise. He took me aside after one board meeting. He said, "Hey, you're making some bad decisions." He was a very, very successful guy, super successful. And I said, I know. I said, obviously, you've had a lot of success in life. How do you make good decisions? And he looked at me and he said, I started making a lot of good decisions, primarily by making a lot of bad decisions. It wasn't really helpful, but I realized that It's through experience of life that we cultivate wisdom. And we're faced with decisions all the time. All the time. Some of them are trivial, maybe. What should I eat? What should I wear? Some of the decisions that you have to make are not so trivial. What should I focus on today? Should I take this new job? Should I end this relationship? How do you make decisions that resonate as good decisions? That's what I'd like to talk about with you a little bit. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about what is it that gets in the way of making good decisions, because all of us have made some really lousy decisions in our lives. Second, I'd like to talk about the power of pausing. Like when you pause and you step back, you can begin to access this quality of kind of impartial observation. The most important thing I think I'd like to talk about is the power of consulting your body. And finally, if we have time, I'd like to talk about decision making as part of contemplating karma, which can be very, very helpful. So what gets in the way of making good decisions? In the 1930s, the government of Queensland in Australia's North Country decided to introduce cane toads to the country to reduce the population of beetles that were destroying the sugar crops. And guess what? They handled the beetles pretty well, but then suddenly they had an infestation of cane toads. Not a good decision. So I was doing a little research on this, and I kind of put this under the topic of it seemed like a good idea at the time. And think about these decisions that were made on a large level. Someone thought lead paint was a great idea. Someone thought leaded gasoline was a really great idea. Someone out there thought, asbestos is going to really be really, really helpful for us. And there was a time when you went to a shoe store to buy shoes, that you could put on a pair of shoes and then step on a little platform that would give you an X-ray, would show you the bones of your foot and how they fit in that shoe. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Putting cocaine in Coca-Cola, putting morphine in infant products, formaldehyde in cosmetics. There was a time when doctors would work in the morgue to go deliver a baby without washing their hands. Seemed like a good idea at the time. So it's very interesting. In fact, you might just think of a decision you have to make. And it could be anything. Just some decision you've got coming up. I'll give you 15 seconds to think of something. Is the decision clear? Is it like, oh yeah, absolutely? If it's not clear, it's really helpful to kind of tease that out, because I know a lot of people, myself included, that have a lot of stress, a lot of suffering around decisions that aren't clear. And if it's not clear, basically it comes down to this. There's something in you that wants to make that decision, and there's something inside that isn't so sure. Teasing that out, getting more familiar with those components, there's something that wants it, there's something that's not so sure, that could open up a whole bunch of really interesting information. I've mentioned this before many times, but when someone tells me they're going through a breakup in a relationship, I can't help, but I have to ask this question. When did you know the relationship wasn't going to work out? I would say 80 to 85% of the time, the person will respond and say, I knew in the beginning. Wow, how do we override that? I have a rather complex background around relationships. I actually had an arranged marriage, living in a yoga ashram. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful person, really, truly wonderful person, but it wasn't the right match. And something in me knew that in the beginning, and somehow I overrode that, and of course, paid a price later. I think what happens is we tend to make decisions with our heads. And the mind, of course, is very fickle. It is very easily influenced by all kinds of different things. But primarily, if we're looking through the lens of Buddhist psychology, the mind is most easily influenced by three factors: by greed, by hatred, and by delusion, by confusion. So how this shows up is really beautifully put in this description of the 8 worldly winds. As you're trying to cultivate equanimity and steadiness and clarity, you're buffeted by these winds all the time. And the winds are primarily the winds that have to do with wanting and greed, and with fear and aversion. So what is it that we want, that the mind wants? Well, the mind is looking for praise. The mind is looking for, let's say the ego. The mind or the ego is looking for praise. They're being told it's great. It's craving success. It's craving pleasure. It's craving fame. It wants to be adored. It also is built on some pretty powerful fears. The fear of blame, the fear of failure, the fear of pain, and the fear of shame. If the mind is running the show, it is going to be informed by these 8 worldly winds. There's just no question about it. So when you have a decision to make, and your desire for pleasure is really powerful, or your fear of pain is really powerful, that's going to influence the decisions that you make. Some decisions are really easy. They're really quick. Indian food tonight, perfect. Oh yeah, I've been wanting to watch that movie for a long time. Or these shoes feel great without the X-ray machine. These are bingo, I want these. Other decisions in life are a little more tortuous, of course. If you're looking at a new job, maybe you're thinking, this job looks risky and unpleasant, and my boss is probably a psychopath, but I really like the title and it pays well. Or you're thinking, I hate his family and I don't like the way he smells, but I don't want to be alone. Or, that position looks like it might be a great match for me, but I don't want to risk the income that I know I'm going to have if I stay where I am. Perhaps you can get a sense of how conflicted we become around decisions. And we fall into this sort of like analysis paralysis, where you're relying on your mind to figure out the right thing to do. As one of my teachers said, it's kind of like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It just sort of inflames things, and we get lost more and more in confusion. So the question becomes, is there a way to shift your consciousness in a way that might give you some insights that might help you to come into a deeper sense of what's right for you when you have a decision to make? As Einstein famously said, no problem was ever solved in the same consciousness that created it. So if you want to shift your awareness, if you want to get out of a rut, you have to shift your consciousness. Fortunately, there are some really cool ways to do that, which we will explore. And kind of transcendent of the mind, and as they say, the mind is a wonderful servant and a terrible master. You can begin to move from the linear rational mind, which is comparing, judging, trying to figure things out, to begin to open up to what we call intuition. or insight, or through the lens of, again, Buddhist psychology, this sense of Buddhi mind. The quality of mind that is unfettered by fear, is unfettered by desire, it's unfettered by confusion, that sense of clear seeing. And one of the ways that we can tune into that is by cultivating what we could call kinesthetic intuition, which is to say, kind of the felt sense, tuning into this idea that the body becomes a very powerful tuning fork. The body, it's an interesting hypothesis. The body doesn't lie. What if that's true? So in the midst of decision making, it can be torture. I know people who have felt a tremendous amount of pain and discomfort around decisions they have to make that are really, really hard. So I think one of the first steps here is to pause. The power of the pause. Something so dramatic in pausing. I was raised a Quaker, and the Quakers have this great line that says, "Don't just do something, sit there." It's a great line. When we can't sit still, we get into a lot of trouble. In fact, it was Blaise Pascal who famously said that all of humanity's problems stem from a man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. That's so powerful. All of humanity's problems stem from a man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. When we can't sit still, we become impulsive. And then there's a penalty to pay, ultimately. Back in college, a bunch of friends and I, on spring break, piled into a friend's Volkswagen van. We drove from Wisconsin down to Utah. And a couple guys in the group had done a lot of extensive hiking in the canyonlands. And it was a blast. We were deep in these canyons in Utah. We only saw the sun about 4 hours a day. We were kind of that deep in. And one day, 3 of us decided to do some climbing, and we went up a side canyon and had this amazing climb, doing friction climbing on sandstone. And we got up to the rim of the canyon. It was phenomenal to see the vista of the land there. So we decided that we would kind of hike down a bit and then go down another side canyon. And my friend had been there before, said, if we go down this side canyon and we track this down, it should take us right back to our base camp. So as we were hiking down that side canyon, it was a little freaky. We saw a couple snakes and so forth, but then suddenly there was a drop off. It was a pretty dramatic drop off, but we were feeling so great. We were feeling so good. And so I was about maybe 15, at least I'd say 15 feet. It was a pretty hefty drop off. And so I said, to my friend, I said, "Are you sure this is the way?" He goes, "Yeah, this should take us down, back down to the base camp." So I jumped. And then once I jumped, I looked around and I realized that it was a box canyon. There was no way back. And so we sat there for a little while, and finally he jumped, and then his girlfriend jumped. After a long time, she had a lot of fear, and she kind of messed up her ankle when she jumped. But again, we were exhilarated. Okay, we're heading down to the base camp, and we went down a little bit further, and suddenly there was a more dramatic drop-off. And we realized we were caught in a box canyon. No one knew where we were. We were in the middle of nowhere in Utah. It's a long story, but in essence, what we did is we took our jeans and we tied them leg to leg. I had my friend's belt under my armpits, and he began to lower me over this ledge. And I was holding on to the to the wall with my fingernails. And suddenly I lost my grip. I swung away, And one of the pair of jeans began to slowly rip up the crotch, and then it let go. And there was a long time in the air as I'm just falling and falling on these rocks. I remember hearing Jane scream up above, and I'm just in my underwear. And magically I landed and I was safe, but there was no way they could come down. So the whole ordeal was, is there another box canyon? What if now we're separated and we're trapped? But I made it down. I had to jump into the river, swim across the river. 2 guys had to hike out, get a helicopter. The helicopter came the next day. It was snowing. Got the guys down. We had to hike out. If I had just waited a few more minutes, that whole adventure would have been avoided. So pausing is really powerful. Like when in doubt, pause. Or that acronym, WAIT, W-A-I-T. Why am I talking? That whole thing of like, just slow down and pause. So what happens when you pause with mindfulness? Inevitably, what happens is when you pause, you're beginning to sever your identification with this thinking, planning, comparing mind. You actually begin to cultivate what some traditions call a witness, or the observer, your capacity to observe with dispassion. And this is one of the very strong elements that you cultivate whenever you meditate. And that's where a lot of the freedom comes, is that you begin to realize I don't have to believe every thought. In fact, I'm the one who's aware of my thoughts. So this quality of the witness, it's non-judging. One of my teachers, Swami Kripalvinanji, when he went back to India, he was asked by one of his top disciples. And he was asked this question: what's the highest quality of a spiritual seeker? I was pretty sure his response was going to be, whatever you're enjoying, stop it. Work harder. But he said the following. He said, the highest quality of a spiritual seeker is self-observation without judgment. Now, when you pause and really take that in, the highest quality is self-observation without judgment. And if you just take a moment and just sense that, what does it mean right now to be observing the self without judgment? This quality of the witness has no preferences. It has no judgments. It's not for nor against anything. It's simply the capacity to observe what's true. I mentioned before Robert Heinlein in his book Stranger in a Strange Land. So he was talking about this capacity to truly observe without assumptions. And someone who's trained in this, and he said, well, what color is that shed over there? And the response was, it's green on this side. There was no assumption that the shed is green. This side is green. This quality of the witness can absolutely open new doorways. Because in the mind, and again, back to making decisions, when something wants it and something doesn't, and depending on which one has control of the microphone, you're spinning and spinning and spinning, is playing out your scenarios. When you shift your state, when you get access to the observer, to that impartial observer, new opportunities begin to open up. So shifting your state is really, really critical. Abraham Lincoln allegedly said, if I have 5 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. shifting your state can be that powerful. So there is an exercise which I have found, tremendously helpful. I've shared this in the past, but it's one I think you'll find really, really helpful. And it's a way that you can explore making a decision and bringing the body into the practice. So I was meeting with a young person, and they were kind of torn up around decisions they needed to make in their life. They just finished college, and they were feeling a little bit directionless. So they wanted to talk about what they might do. So I said, well, what are your options? And she said, well, I've been thinking maybe I'd like to join the Peace Corps. Maybe I should go to grad school. I was thinking maybe I should start a family. And I said, well, are you in a relationship? She said, no, but I could. And she said, maybe I should just get a job. I just don't know what I want to do. I said, what would you say are the top ones that you want to explore? She said, well, joining the Peace Corps would be really, really cool. I've talked to other people who have done it. It seems like an amazing adventure. But then there's something in me that would just kind of like to get a job and find a relationship and, do that route as well. So I invited her into this experience that was taught to me by this German psychotherapist who was trained in focusing, which is sort of a practice of somatic investigation. On the one hand, it's very, very simple. But on the other, it's incredibly sophisticated. So essentially what I did is I invited her to kind of reflect on what two options were most interesting to her. Like, what were the top two? She mentioned a couple, Peace Corps, grad school, start a family, get a job. And she said, well, I think the most attractive to me would be join the Peace Corps and just get a regular job and look for a relationship and have some kids. I said, great, okay. So I talked a little bit last time about this acronym of inward as a way of kind of exploring. The I is to kind of really inquire, what's the most important question here? The N is to cultivate a more natural state of awareness. The W is to be the witness, or sort of like watch what happens when you explore that question. The A is to kind of allow anything to kind of unfold. The R is to kind of record and notice what's happening. And then the D is to kind of debrief. What was helpful? What do you want to remember? So in essence, the practice works like this. When you have a decision to make, and I'm going to guide you through this in a couple minutes, but I'll tell you what happened with her. You sort of make a binary choice. Call, doorway A, Peace Corps. B, get a job, look for a relationship, have a family. Now you can do it with 3 options, but it's helpful to kind of boil it down to 2. So we explored this. And again, part of the whole idea of like setting the stage is like, okay, so what's the question? The question was, which of these options would be most life-affirming for me? Which one feels like it's the one that I really want to pursue? So now we explored moving into kind of the natural state, which is sort of like moving from the mind predominating to more presence. So I invited her to do a little movement, to do some breath, to kind of let go of any attachment to the outcome, to really kind of sense how deeply she really wanted to get in contact with what really called her. We did a little body scan to kind of help her to kind of soften into a more receptive state. We then took a little time for her to kind of establish herself as the witness, non-judging, non-preferential, but just to kind of be aware of what's there. We took a little time for her to, with her eyes closed, to kind of sense how she perceives information. Some of us were very visual. Some of us are more auditory. And some of us are more feeling oriented. So we kind of like explored those channels, and I primarily invited her to kind of open up to the feeling realm. And how we tend to feel is usually through the midline of the body, the eyes, the throat, the heart, the belly, the lower abdomen. Kinesthetic information arises primarily in ways that are strong and unmistakable. The clench in your gut, the ache in your heart, the lump in your throat. Sometimes it comes as a wave or a blip. There's a feeling and then it's gone. Quite often it's not formed. It's below the line of awareness, so it's amorphous. And here the magic word is something. It's just there's something. I can feel something in my throat, for example. So we kind of sensitize to that. And here's the cool thing. So I invited her to imagine. Here's the door. Peace Corps. Here's the door. Get a job, look for a relationship, and start a family. So I invited her to imagine, just choose one of those doorways. Doesn't matter which one. Choose the one that just calls to you now. And then tell your body, this is what we're going to do. And now pay attention to the felt sense. Pay attention to what feels, to what you feel on the inside. So she didn't tell me which doorway she chose. But she sat quietly and she began to say, I feel like a tingling, bubbling sensations in my belly and kind of up to my sternum. It feels kind of carbonated. So I asked her, I said, so, you might make room for that, say hello to that. I asked her, I said, is there an emotional word that resonates with those sensations? And she said, yeah, this is anxiety and nervousness. And so I invited her to kind of check back. And part of the art of kinesthetic intuition is you look for resonance. Above the line, she labeled it as anxiety and nervousness. But I invited her to check back to sense, do those words resonate? Are those the right words? And she said, kinda. And then a long pause, she said, no, not really. It's not really anxiety. I think there's some excitement here. I said, is there a sense of, that sense of excitement? You might again kind of say hello to it. And kind of give it room to move and flow. And she kind of sat there, she said, like, oh, now I can kind of feel a tension in my heart, kind of up into my throat. So I invited her to say hello to that. And I asked her is there a sense of what it needed? And she said, it just kind of needs some reassurance. It just wants to be seen. So I invited her, I said, well, if you could offer that, if you could just offer it some reassurance, I'll let it know that you see it in such a way that it feels completely satiated, and just track whatever might move or shift or change on the inside. Again, she sat with that for a while, and she said, I really feel it kind of opening. It's sort of softening, and now I can feel my shoulders relaxing. I feel like a deeper sense of ease. And we sat with that for a while. After a while, and she kind of described more and more sensations, and I invite her at the end. I said, so, as you've come in contact with this sort of felt sense here, what advice do you have to give yourself? A long pause, and she said, be present to the anxiety, listen to it, and follow the excitement. That's what she said. I said, so if you were to do that in your life, not perfectly, not all the time, but to really listen to the fear, listen to the anxiety, and also to listen to the excitement, what would that be like? And she said, it would be this amazing adventure. So after a while, she kind of opened her eyes and she said, there was always something in me that wanted to do the Peace Corps. But there's also something in me that was just scared and thought maybe I should play it safe. But when I really saw the anxiety, and I saw that the anxiety actually had some excitement in it, and when I really asked what the anxiety needed was just to be seen and heard and acknowledged, then once I sort of like met that need, I'm really kind of excited about the possibility of the Peace Corps. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. What I find when it comes to decision making, part of the key to decision making is when you can really get into touch with kind of the tendrils of what's between you and making a decision. There's almost always an unmet need. There's something you're wanting, there's something you're needing that isn't happening. And if you can name that unmet need, sometimes that's the key. And for her, because there was this anxiety, quite naturally, the anxiety of the unknown, of learning a new language and going into a new culture, that what that anxiety really needed was to be named and to be seen and to be given some space. And when she did that, something shifted and became much more of this kinesthetic, yes, this is what calls me. It's a cool process. It's a very, very cool process. And what I find is I can kind of apply this for myself with the small stuff, but it's also really helpful when you're kind of deconstructing the big stuff, if you will. So I would love to kind of guide you into this. We have enough time for this. So you might think about a decision that you need to make. And it doesn't have to be your lifelong angst-ridden inquiry. You might make it smaller. It might be, what do I want to have for dinner tomorrow night? Make it small. So if you would, you can close your eyes. And as I guide you through this, this is not going to be, the words may not be a match for you, but it's going to be kind of along the line. So ignore me if I offer anything that doesn't work for you. If you would, you can close your eyes. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. Bring your mind, if you would, to a decision, some decision you need to make. And then if you would, explore if you can bring this decision down to 2 or 3 possibilities. You might sort of get in touch with your sincere desire to find a decision that really resonates for you, that really feels all the way through kind of a green light. And for this practice, letting go of any expectations, just see this as a moment-to-moment allowing of what arises. And we'll explore what it's like to kind of move to a more natural state of presence. So you might take 3 breaths, and on each exhalation, notice if you could relax just a little bit more. Notice the sounds around you. And feel this sense of present moment awareness. Can you imagine taking the seat of the witness? This quality of self-observation without judgment. Observation without preferences. And you might take a moment from this place of the witness, open your attention to sound. Notice the sounds around you, passing through all by themselves. Notice any visual phenomena, the quality of the light beyond your closed eyes. And take a few moments, if you would, to attune to inner feeling, just sensing the eyes, the throat, sensing the heart and the lungs, the sternum and the belly. As we move into somatic inquiry, sensitizing yourself to the possible arising of strong sensation or flickering sensation, or probably somewhat amorphous and vague sensation. And now, if you would, imagine these options in front of you, 2 or maybe 3. And as you're ready, decide which one, it doesn't matter which one, and tell yourself, this is what we're going to do. Tell your body, this is what we're going to do. And then notice what you feel on the inside. Imagine you could report out, even as if you're reporting out loud. What do you feel? What do you notice inside? Can you sense, is there any unmet need? Is there a sense of what you would need that would support you in moving toward this particular option? And if that need was met, what would that feel like? What would that be like inside? And while this is just a brief investigation here, as you sense what you've named, what may have shifted inside, regarding this decision, what advice do you have to give yourself? And if you were to do that, not perfectly, not all the time, what would that feel like? What would that be like inside? You might now kind of let this fall away. If you like, you might take a few moments to move or stretch. And if you like, you can open your eyes or you can remain with them closed. Now, there's something really interesting about this practice, and there's a possibility you might have had an insight from this. There's another possibility that maybe not, maybe you're a little more confused. But here's the thing. You have just very sincerely, possibly, done a really deep investigation around possibilities here. You've moved from the mind into the felt sense of the body. And what quite often many people report, that just by taking this time to sincerely inquire, while it may not be tied up in a neat bow right now, you may have planted a very deep seed for an insight to arise down the road. And with this practice, and many times people ask, well, should I go back and explore the other option? And you certainly can, but what I found for myself, I'd say 95% of the time, I don't need to explore another option. Like I get enough information from just exploring one of those options. And it's a fascinating process to me, moving from the linear rational mind and opening up to other sources of information. And it's all part of this practice of inquiry. It's not about figuring it out. It's about getting more familiar with it. And as you've taken the time to get more familiar with this decision, you may find, if not now, sometime down the road, some clarity might emerge. At least that's my expectation and that's my hope. You know, Carlos Castaneda famously said, keep death on your left shoulder as an advisor. It's a very, very powerful practice. Another option is have your body available as an ally and a consultant. When you have a decision to make, take some time to pause. Just to be aware of what gets in the way of good decisions is oftentimes the mind, just buffeted by those 8 worldly winds. And when you can pause, you can begin to access and contact this sense of the witness, your capacity to observe without preference, your capacity to observe with clarity. And when you can take that, call on the wisdom of the felt sense of your body, you may find that you're tapping into a resource that can make a lot of difference in your life. I have certainly found that to be true for myself. And it's my sincere hope that this has been helpful for you. Many, many blessings to you in your practice. May you and your body have a wonderful time, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Take good care.